I try and say this with a straight face, but one thing you can guarantee, bet your bottom dollar, that will happen as we move into election 2024. The truth and facts will be rearranged by various individuals to suit their punchlines. So, Jim Jordan, freedom of speech and all of that stuff, he held a hearing. Not the first time he's held a hearing, and it turned into a calamity circus. Just for the records, because you know they will try to pull the wool over as many eyes as possible. This is what really went down. Rewind the tape. Rewind the tape.
That one of the witnesses has, within the last half an hour, released additional information that the Republicans may, and you as the majority, may have been able to review and have information about. And if that information is, in fact, going to be used at this hearing, I just want the point of order to be recognized that the Democrats have not been able to review or to see any of that information. Will you be using any of the information that has recently been released by... Excuse me? Will you be using any of that information?
We'll be using whatever information that our staff has put together for us to use at this hearing.
And have you had that information before this hearing began, before today?
We use all information that is given to our staff, and we will use it to make sure we educate the American people.
And information that you have not shared with us?
Oh, we think it was posted online.
Within just this half an hour, the last 20 minutes, but it's not information that was privy to us before that.
You want us to get you a copy of it? Because we can make a copy
I think we
for
can
you.
go online and find a copy. We can look on our Twitter accounts and see it. But I just want the point of order that you have not shared any of that with us. And I understand that you may have been looking at this long before today's hearing.
We obtained it at the same time frame that was
Excuse me,
posted online.
before we continue, is one of your colleagues trying to speak to me? Or I think this was a conversation between you and me.
I was speaking to the parliamentarian, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
It's the gentlelady's time.
Okay, all right, well.
And I recognize you for an opening statement.
And I had a point of order, which I was asking you to address.
And I answered your question.
Okay, great. Now I will begin my opening statements. 3 weeks ago, House Oversight had this hearing with actual Twitter executives who had actual firsthand knowledge about what happened in 2020. And that didn't go so well for the House Republicans because real evidence showed that there wasn't coordination between Twitter and the federal government as they'd like the American people to believe, and that all the so-called Twitter files really showed was a discussion on content moderation, and that we only got a fraction of the discussion. So now we're back again, no surprise. What else have they got to talk about? Not what's interested in the American people are interested, not what taxpayer dollars have brought us here to Washington to do. And the Republicans have brought in two of Elon Musk's public scribes to release cherry-picked, out-of-context emails and screenshots designed to promote his chosen narrative, Elon Musk's chosen narrative, that is now being parroted by the Republicans because the Republicans think that these witnesses will tell a story that's going to help them out politically. On Tuesday, the majority released an 18-page report claiming to show that the FTC is, quote, harassing Twitter. Oh my, poor Twitter. Including by seeking information about its interactions with individuals before us today. How did the report reach this conclusion? By showing two single paragraphs from a single demand letter, even though the report itself makes clear that there were numerous demand letters with numerous requests, none of which we've been able to see, that are more demand letters and more requests of Twitter. In other words, the conclusions are based on a fraction of information out of context, cherry-picked, surprise, just like the Twitter files. The majority conveniently forgot to share with the public that in May of 2022, well before Musk acquired Twitter, the FTC had already fined the company $150 million for failing to safeguard users' data. Users, the American people, other individuals, its 150 million users, Twitter had not safeguarded them. Twitter entered into this consent agreement that required it to make regular reports to the FTC, and the previous consent decree between Twitter and the FTC was entered into in 2011. Elon Musk might not like this requirement, but Twitter had issues with FTC long before Musk bought the company, and there's nothing political about that. We've asked for the full set of documents that Musk must have shared with the Republicans on the committee, but we can draw some logical conclusions from what we have been given. You know what the Republican report actually shows? 2 conclusions. First, the FTC has extraordinarily serious concerns about Twitter's handling of consumers' data, and that there's something going on between congressional Republicans and Elon Musk. Mr. Chairman, Americans can see through this. Musk is helping you out politically, and you're going out of your way to promote and protect him and to praise him for his work. This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now. There are many legitimate questions about where Musk got the financing to buy Twitter. We know for a fact that foreign countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and possibly even Russia and China are investors presently in Twitter. Do these countries now have access to private Twitter user data? What agreements has Elon Musk reached with them? We know how Elon Musk funded the purchase because it's public. Let's look at a slide here. Here's what it shows. Musk got $500 million in financing from Binance. That's in highlight for you. A crypto exchange platform run by Chinese billionaire. That billionaire has described his funding as a small contribution to the cause. I don't know what that cause is. Musk got $1 billion from Larry Ellison, whose super PAC spent millions on Republican candidates last cycle, including election deniers. Musk got $375 million, highlighted here, from Qatar, which has recently been questioned about its lobbying practices. Musk got $700 million from Vi Capital, a secretive investment fund based in Dubai. And very interesting, as you can see down below, the nephew of the Saudi king is Twitter's second largest investor at a much larger amount. And the chair wants us to think that Elon Musk is the victim. The chairman wants us to believe that the Republicans are concerned with the federal government unfairly going after Twitter and Twitter unfairly taking down conservative posts. Just like we did several weeks ago, we're going to show that's not what the evidence shows. I want to underscore the very real threat posed by Twitter files and by the witnesses in front of us today. Here's Yoel Roth describing the harassment he and other former Twitter employees have faced because of the irresponsible way in which the witnesses in front of us and others have released this cherry-picked, out-of-context data.
Twitter. Employees as far away as Manila in the Philippines. The Twitter files, I would note first and foremost, didn't just affect me, but affected much more junior employees at Twitter. Employees as far away as Manila in the Philippines were doxxed, had their families threatened, and experienced harm equal to or greater than what I've experienced. But concurrent with the Twitter files, Elon Musk also made the decision to share a defamatory allegation that I support or condone pedophilia. And this lie led directly to a wave of homophobic and anti-Semitic threats and harassment against me, of which Twitter has removed vanishingly little. And following the Daily Mail's decision to publish where I live, ultimately I had to leave my home and sell it. Those are the consequences for this type of online harassment and speech.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm not exaggerating when I say that you have called before you 2 witnesses who pose a direct threat to people who oppose them. It's funny when people have to go through that. Exactly. This is unacceptable. I'm ready for it. I don't know if a lot of other people are. But just as it was unacceptable for Kevin McCarthy to provide 41,000 hours of sensitive security footage to a biased talking head in an effort to rewrite what happened on January 6th, This is a new Republican playbook, apparently.
Mr.
Risk
Chairman.
American safety
Chairman.
and security to score political points.
The gentlelady's words should be struck. We do not accuse witnesses of threatening others. That is out of line and
I'm
outside the rules of this
not striking down
committee.
that, and I can have an
You don't
opinion
get to determine
about
what's
what
struck down.
witnesses-
Well, you do get an opening statement, and it's
And
about,
so let
it's
me
about
finish.
over.
The committee will suspend.
We know this is because at the first hearing, the chairman claimed that big government and big tech colluded to shape and mold the narrative and suppress information and censor Americans. This is a false narrative. We're engaging in false narratives here, and we are going to tell the truth. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I would just point out the consent decree was in our report. We offered your staff also the opportunity to review the FTC letters. You have not come over to review those letters. Third, the idea that I believe both of these individuals who are getting ready to testify, I believe they're both Democrats. The idea that two journalists who happen to be
Did you not give that offer at 8 o'clock last
I'm
night?
talking now. Your time was ended a few
Neither
seconds
of us
ago.
are in time.
I don't think they're here to help us politically. I think they're here to tell us the truth. And oh, by the way, the first FTC letter to Twitter after the first set of Twitter files, the very first question was, who are the journalists you're talking to? And you guys don't care. You don't care.
Do you
don't
care
want
about the
you don't want the American
2011
people to see.
consent
You don't
decree?
want the American people to see what happened, the full video, transparency. You don't want that, and you don't want two journalists who have been named personally by the Biden administration, FTC, in a letter.
The Biden administration
And you're saying
is
they're
not
here
the
to help us.
FTC.
They're here to tell their story. And frankly, I think they're brave individuals for being willing to come after they've been named in a letter from the Biden FTC.
Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity. But a deeper concern that I have relates to the ethics of how journalists receive and present certain information. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends.
Really? You wouldn't agree that a journalist should avoid spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily disputed, or invalid conclusion?
Congresswoman, I've done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test between the public
reclaiming my
interest.
time. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I ask you this because before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, and pardon the oxymoron, you stated this on Joe Rogan's podcast about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, "I think that's true of any kind of journalism," and you'll see it behind me here. "I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once you start getting handed things, then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross that line. Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes or no?"
Yes.
Good. Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon Musk, it's my time. Please do not interrupt me. Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least generates another right-wing conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it. Before the release of the emails in August of last year, you had 661,000 Twitter followers. After the Twitter files, your followers doubled, and now it's 3 times what it was last August. I imagine your Substack readership, which is a subscription, increased significantly because of the work that you did for Elon Musk. Now, I'm not asking you to put a dollar figure on it, but it's quite obvious that you've profited from the Twitter files. You hit the jackpot on that Vegas slot machine to which you referred. That's true, isn't it?
I've also reinvested
You've made some. No. Is it true that you have profited since you were the recipient of the Twitter files? You've made money. Yes or no?
I
Very
think it's
simple
probably a wash, honestly.
No, you have made money that you did not have before, correct?
But I've also spent money that I didn't have
Okay.
before. I just hired a whole group of people to
Patently
investigate.
obvious answer, reclaiming my time. Attention is a powerful drug. Eyeballs, money, prominence, attention, all of it points to problems with accuracy and credibility. And the larger point, which is social media companies are not biased against conservatives, and if anything, they ignored their own policies by allowing Trump and other MAGA extremists to post incessant lies, endangering public safety and even our democracy. Hypocrisy is the hangover of an addiction to attention. Now, I want to point out another alleged finding from the Twitter files. Mr. Schellenberger, you've referenced several times this $3.4 million that the FBI paid to Twitter in 2020 that was referenced in General Counsel Jim Baker's email. I first want to confirm that nowhere in the email does Baker say that the money was paid to censor information, take down posts, suspend accounts, or do anything relating to content moderation. Is that correct?
It is.
Thank you. But honest reporting would have explained that the $3.4 million was paid to release information, not censor it. One of my colleagues on this panel repeated your distortions and told Americans this reimbursement was used to, quote, censor certain stories. That's a flat-out lie. Mr. Schellenberger, are you aware of Section 2706 under the Stored Communications Act? It says when social media companies comply with subpoenas, warrants, or court orders, it costs them money, so they get reimbursed. The FBI makes these requests and reimbursements to discover evidence then run relevant to a criminal investigation. Let me repeat that. The FBI makes these requests to help catch the bad guys. That helps keep child predators off social media sites. It helps keep violent criminals off our streets. I support the FBI and our law enforcement agencies. It would be nice if our Republican colleagues did the same and not fabricate explanations for payments that are defined for clear purposes in federal law. My time is just about wrapped up.
May I respond?
The truth is that social media companies are unregulated monoliths. They pose danger to individuals. They allow posts that bring harm, and that's the bottom line. That the other side will not tell you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman had no time to yield back, but I will let the gentleman, Mr. Schellenberger, respond. And I would also point out that I did not say what the
Mr.
FBI
Chairman,
paid Twitter for. All I said was they paid Twitter $3.4 million.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I didn't ask Mr. Schellenberger a question.
Yeah, but the witness wants to respond, and the witness have been invited at our guests, and frankly, they've been attacked by the federal
please
government.
do that.
I'm going to let Mr. Schellenberger answer that before recognizing Mr. Bishop.
So are you going to do that as we move down the line of questioners?
The gentleman has not been recognized. You had your 5 minutes, and frankly, I think that's at the discretion of the chair. Mr. Schellenberger, you can respond briefly.
I'll be brief, which is that my understanding from those files is that Twitter had decided not to take that money until recently. So if you read that email, what Stasha, I believe, the person that sent it, is saying is that they started taking money after previously not taking it. And I believe that the reason that they had not taken it earlier was because they did not want that financial conflict clouding their relationship.
Mr. Chairman, the money is payment under federal law so that they can
The gentleman from
costs
North Carolina, Mr. Bishop, is recognized for 5 minutes.
material that they've been asked
I thank the gentleman.
That's the bottom line.
Mr. Taibbi, would you care to, I'm down here on this end, sir. Would you care to respond to the attack on your ethics? You weren't given really an opportunity to answer. And if you'd be brief, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you as well.
Sure, just quickly, that moment on the Joe Rogan show, I was actually recounting a section from Seymour Hersh's book, Reporter, where he described a scene where the CIA gave him a story, and he was very uncomfortable. He said that I, who had always gotten the secrets, was being handed the secrets. Look, again, I've done lots of whistleblower stories. There's always a balancing test that you make when you're given material, and you're always balancing newsworthiness versus the motives of your sources. In this case, the newsworthiness clearly outweighed any other considerations, and I think everybody else who worked on the project agreed.
Doesn't it seem like any reporter who breaks a blockbuster story is going to get attention, and there may be even financial consequences that follow? It seems like as surely as the night follows the day, that's the case, right?
That is true, although I would like to clear up, some things that have been misrepresented. Not one of us has actually been paid to do any of this work. We've all, traveled on our own. We've hired our personnel on our own, and I've just hired a pretty large team to investigate this issue out of my own pocket.
The fact that the attempt comes from the dais across the aisle to smear you, frankly, I think liberals, if I understand that, in your background, you're both good liberals, and you come in, and the Democrats' hostility to what you've undertaken is astonishing to behold, but it's part of the picture we're seeing. In Twitter files number 15, Mr. Taibbi, you exposed Hamilton 68, a website associated with the German Marshall Fund that purported in a dashboard to identify Russian bot networks and became ubiquitously cited by media to identify media stories or narratives that supposedly flowed from Russia. From Russia! You showed that the front man for Hamilton 68 was Clint Watts, a former FBI agent. At Twitter, the trust and safety executives were ridiculing Hamilton 68 for the ludicrous identifications that it was making, which they could reverse engineer and figure out who those accounts were. And then in Twitter files number 17, after disclosing Mr. Watts' identity, you disclosed that J.M. Berger is the creator of Hamilton 68. And guess what? He was a federal contractor, right?
He was, yes. He denies that he worked on it for the Global Engagement Center, but he was an employee of theirs until about a month before the dashboard's release.
Just a month before, and he said, I believe publicly, that the dashboard was the product of 3 years' work. So doesn't it beg sort of the intriguing question whether the creation of this fraudulent Hamilton 68 dashboard was effectively underwritten by government funding?
Yes, I think that's a good question. Certainly the German Marshall Fund, which is the NGO that is at the top of the chain in this organization. It's the German Marshall Fund, then the Alliance for Securing Democracy, and then Hamilton 68. They're a federal contractor. They received over $1 million from the Department of Defense. They're the board of the Alliance for Securing Democracy, has a former acting head of the CIA, a former deputy head of the NSA, a former chief of the DHS on it. So
I want to make, and the bigger point is hard because the examples sometimes start making it. I want to introduce you to, or introduce the country to somebody else. I think you've mentioned it in one of your writings, Richard Stengel. You know who that is?
Yes, he's the former, the first head of the Global Engagement Center.
I want the American people to hear from him for 30 seconds.
Basically, every country creates their own narrative story. And you know, my old job at the State Department was what people used to joke as the chief propagandist job. We haven't talked about propaganda. Propaganda, I'm not against propaganda. Every country does it, and they have to do it to their own population.
Every country does it. Every country does propaganda, and they have to do it to their own people, is what Mr. Stengel said. If I understand correctly, he was the head of the Global Engagement Center at its creation, right?
He was, and in his book, Information Wars, there are a number of passages where he talks about creating a whole-of-government solution to the information problem. He hastened to say that he didn't want to create a, quote, information ministry, but what he was describing roughly approximates that.
In the half minute I've got left, he also was associated with Hamilton 68, right?
The Global Engagement Center certainly had ties to Hamilton 68.
I think it's closer than that. Well, that'll come out.
Okay. Well, I'd be anxious to hear that.
I hope I'll get yielded in a minute or two from somebody else down the way. There's all sorts of stuff to disclose. This committee has to uncover not that single instance, but this system that you have described. This is the hope that Americans have to set this right. This committee, and that hostility shows what we're up against. It's not 3 pillars to the system, it is 4. And you're seeing the left move to crush you and anybody else who tries to expose this. I yield.
I thank the gentleman for his great 5 minutes, and we now yield to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what to say after that last one. Dear fellow Americans, and we're elected officials, when trying to get at the truth, and we're trying to participate in the process at getting at the truth. Mr. Taibbi, you have said that this isn't really a matter of right or left, that there are lots of different ideological colorations involved in the Twitter files. Is that roughly correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Schellenberg, you would agree with that?
Yes.
So when you release information, have you released any information of, for example, right-wing elements or the Trump White House attempting to moderate content at Twitter?
Yes.
No, not the Trump White House per se, although I did report initially in the first Twitter files that the Trump White House had made and requests and had been honored.
Mr. Schellenberg?
I did not find that.
You haven't found it. So we had a hearing the other day on Twitter, and we had 4 witnesses, 3 for the majority, 1 for the minority, and all 4 testified under oath they had never received a request for content moderation or takedown by the Biden White House, but they did from Donald Trump's White House. And specifically, the case brought up was an exchange between Donald Trump, then President of the United States, and Chrissy Teigen, where he had called her something and she called him something back. I won't repeat it. And this was under oath confirmed. Yeah, that happened, and that the White House shortly thereafter, after Teigen had her email about the president, which was pejorative, that the White House called Twitter to try to take down the content. Are you aware of that, Mr. Tebbe?
Yeah, I've certainly heard that in the news, yes.
But did you see that email exchange?
No, I have not seen an exchange from the Trump White House.
So
I have seen one from Congressman Schiff and one from Senator Angus King.
Yeah, nice try. We're talking about the Trump White House and people under oath confirming it. And my question is, in the Twitter files, did Elon Musk or Twitter provide you with that exchange with Chrissy Teigen?
No, but that's probably because the searches that I was making.
Well, probably because it didn't confirm the bias that this is all about, as the gentleman from Texas would say, the left attempting to control content, when in fact the evidence is the Trump White House most certainly attempted to control content on Twitter. Mr. Schellenberger, were you aware of that, or is this all news to you?
I already answered that question.
No, I mean specifically the Teigen exchange.
Yeah, the Teigen exchange was news to me.
I'm probably mispronouncing her name. I'm sorry. So let me ask: have you combed the so-called Twitter files to look at other examples that aren't about the Biden White House or the FBI that might in fact involve people from the right ideologically or from the Republican ranks? Just to be fair.
Well, again, Mr. Congressman, I mentioned before, we're focused not on the Biden administration or the Trump administration. In fact, just this morning, we released an exchange where Twitter talked about vetting the accounts of both Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump. And really, we were looking at the intelligence agencies when we were doing this research. And as I mentioned before, their conclusions targeted people on both the left and the right globally, again, including the Yellow Vest movement in France, the pro-Maduro accounts in South America, and leftist news organizations in America like Truth Out and Consortium. Some of those people are my friends, actually. And we found those in intelligence lists that were passed on to Twitter, just as we found lists that included ordinary Trump supporters.
Thank you. Reclaiming my time, I appreciate that, because in some ways what you just said undermines the premise of this select committee, which is that the federal government has been organized to weaponize against conservative voices. And of course, what you've just indicated in your testimony is, well, actually, that's not the evidence you found.
No, I think this committee, my understanding is that they're concerned about the weaponization of the government against free speech, which is certainly what we're finding.
Thank you. My time has expired, but I appreciate your understanding of our committee. I have a different understanding. I yield back.
Well, you got the wrong understanding. Last week in the full Judiciary Committee hearing, I introduced into the record a story of a left-wing journalist who said that talked about the FBI putting a paid informant, a felon, in the Black Lives Matter movement in Denver. I want to focus on the First Amendment, just like protecting the First Amendment, just like these guys
Point
do.
of order, Mr. Chair. Are you going to respond after every?
No, I'm taking my 5 minutes.
This is
I
your.
can take
Oh,
my 5 minutes.
It's your 5 minutes
I
now.
can take my 5 minutes when I want to, and I'm taking my 5 minutes.
Okay,
now.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I would ask for an additional few seconds for being interrupted by the ranking member. But the truth is, we want to focus on protecting the First Amendment. Mr. Schellenberger, are you a Republican?
No, I'm not.
You got any pro-Trump bumper stickers on your car?
I voted for Biden.
Voted for Biden. You know how many MAGA hats laying around your house, right?
I do not.
Yeah, but you said earlier, both you and Mr. Taibbi said this is the most chilling thing you've ever seen as journalists. Mr. Taibbi, the same thing. You're not a Republican either, right?
No, I'm not.
You didn't vote for. I mean, like, this is about protecting the First Amendment. Mr. Taibbi, I want to read from your Twitter file number 9. You say this: after weeks of Twitter files, the Bureau issued a statement Wednesday, referring to the FBI. Here's what the FBI said: it is unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency. You then follow up, and this is why I think you're an award-winning author, you then follow up, they must think we're unambitious if our sole aim is to discredit the FBI. After all, a whole range of government agencies discredit themselves in the Twitter files. And then you go on to, in this particular Twitter file, to talk about what Mr. Bishop was just talking about, the GEC at the State Department. You talk about the CIA. You talk about the DOD. You talk about the FBI. You talk about the DHS. You talk about the Foreign Intelligence Task Force, which is a combination of all these. But there was one agency you didn't mention, because you didn't know at the time. One agency, you had almost the whole alphabet, but you didn't mention one agency, the FTC. Because you know about them now.
Yes, we
do. You know about them now in an up-close and personal way. You didn't know then, but you do know now. December 2nd, as I said earlier, December 2nd, the first Twitter file comes out, Mr. Taibbi. And I think there are 5 others, including the ones from Mr. Schellenberger. December 13th, the very first letter that the FTC sends to Twitter after the Twitter files, 11 days after the first Twitter file. There have been 5 of them come out. The FTC's first demand in that first letter after the Twitter files come out is identify all journalists, I'm quoting, identify all journalists and other members of the media to whom Twitter worked with. You find that scary, Mr. Taibbi, that you got a federal government agency asking a private company, who in the press are you talking with?
Yeah, I do find it scary. I think it's none of the government's business which journalists a private company talks to and why. I think every journalist should be concerned about that, and the absence of interest in that issue by my fellow colleagues in the mainstream media is an indication of how low the business has sunk. There was once a real esprit de corps and camaraderie within media. Whenever one of us was gone after, we all kind of rose to the challenge and supported.
Used to be.
Yeah.
Used to be the case.
That is gone now. We don't protect one another.
You know what else used to happen? Democrats used to care about protecting First Amendment free speech rights, too. Now it's like, okay, if you're attacking, and I said this on the House floor, I said, don't think they won't come for you. Oh, the big tech, big media, cancel culture, they may come for Republicans and conservatives now, but the mob is never satisfied. They will keep coming. Mr. Schellenberger, you know who the chair of the FTC is?
Not personally.
Lena Khan. Lena Khan. You know who she used to work for?
My understanding is the Judiciary Committee?
Yeah, she's worked for these folks. These same folks have been attacking you today. Same folks. Chair of the FTC. Worked for them. Here's what they said. Here's what she said in a letter where they ask about who these journalists... Again, they named 4 journalists by name. You were 2 of the 4. As I said before, I think it's frankly courageous and brave of you to show up today when you know the federal government's got an eye on you personally. Here's what they asked for in that letter. Any credentialing or background check Twitter has done on journalists. Now think about that. The federal government is saying, we want you to do a background check on members of the press. Freedom of the press mentioned in the First Amendment, and they're doing they want Twitter to do a background check on you before they can talk to you in America? The FTC, led by Lena Khan, who used to work for these guys, is asking that question? Now we know, now we all know why. You guys said at the outset, this is the most chilling story. And you guys are New York Times bestsellers, award-winning journalists, but in all your time in the journalism field, this issue, most important. And how this, I think, what'd you call it, Mr. Schellenberg, this is complex, what'd you call it, the
censorship industrial complex.
Totally. This web of censorship, big government, big tech, NGOs, all this web of censorship that Mr. Bishop was getting into in his line of questioning. That's what this committee is going to get to. And that's not right or left. This is just right or wrong. This is wrong. We know it's wrong, and it's about protecting the First Amendment. I yield back. I now recognize the ranking member for her 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Taibbi, the emails and documents you've produced all date to around 2020. Is that correct?
No, there's a significant portion of them from 2017 and 2018 as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Schellenberger, what dates do you have?
I believe that we had emails including 2022, 2021, 2020.
That's also true.
2019.
And Mr. Taibbi said 2018. Do you have 2018 as well?
I can't remember.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taibbi, how many employees did Twitter employ in approximately the time period of 2020, 2021? Do you know?
I don't.
Okay, it was 7,500. Do you know how many were in its legal team during that time period?
I don't. I'm sorry.
And do you know how many were in its public policy team?
I don't.
Mr. Schellenberger, do you know how many were employed in content moderation during that time?
I do not know.
Okay. So we're looking at thousands of employees overall and hundreds in offices were the focus of emails and documents you released. I will ask you, Mr. Schellenberger, how many emails did Mr. Musk give you access to?
I mean, we went through thousands of emails.
Did he give you access to all of the emails for the time period in which?
Yeah, I never had a single request denied. And not only that, but the amount of files that we were given were so voluminous that there was no way that anybody could have gone through them beforehand. And we never found an instance where there was any evidence that anything had been taken out.
Okay, so you would believe that you have probably millions of emails and documents, right? That's correct, would you say?
Millions.
No, I think the number's less than
too
that.
high.
Okay, 100,000?
That's probably closer.
Probably, yeah.
Probably close to 100,000 that both of you are saying. Yet in the Twitter files, Mr. Taibbi, you've produced only 338 of those 100,000 emails. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then who gave you access to these emails? Who was the
people at Twitter.
individual that gave you permission to access the emails?
Well, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter, and that's what I'm going to refer to.
Okay. Did Mr. Musk contact you, Mr. Taibbi?
Again, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter.
Mr. Schellenberger, did Mr. Musk contact you?
Actually, no. I was brought in by my friend Barry Weiss, and so this story, there's been a lot of misinformation.
So Mr. Weiss
or
brought you in.
disinformation about
Mr.
that.
Taibbi, Ms. Weiss, thank you. Mr. Taibbi, have you had conversations with Elon Musk?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Taibbi, did Mr. Musk place any conditions on the use of the
Would the
email?
gentlelady yield for a second?
As long as my time is not used for
Are
it.
you trying to get journalists
No,
to
I'm not
expose
trying to
their
get,
sources?
no, I'm not.
Well,
I
it
am
sure sounds
asking,
like it.
no, well, if you will let me finish. And you had conversations with him, you said you weren't going to agree to who your sources were. I'm not asking you your source, I'm asking you if you had conversations with the owner of Twitter. And did Mr. Musk place any conditions on your use of the emails or documents?
No, in fact, I was told explicitly that we were given license to look at present-day Twitter as well as past Twitter.
So you had unfiltered access to Twitter's internal communications and systems?
Yes.
Would those include HR files?
No. We did not have access to personal information of any kind. In fact, we signed a waiver
Have you produced that waiver to the members of anyone on this committee or any staff?
I'd be happy to
Have
produce
you?
it. I haven't, but I'd be happy.
Have you given all of the access to what you were given by your source to this committee?
No, and I would never do that.
Okay. I didn't ask if you were given the committee, the individuals, but all of the files? No, you have not?
No.
So what we're getting is your dissemination, your decision as to what was important and not important in that, correct?
Which is true in every news story.
In every story. But you have files that you say you are sharing, but those files are just a smaller period of the files. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you. And the FTC investigation of Twitter, you knew that they were investigating Twitter before the time period that Mr. Musk came on?
I was aware of it, yes.
And the FTC was concerned with user data being hacked or used? Is that correct, that they didn't have enough checks and balances on that data?
Well, I wasn't privy to that part.
Have you seen the consent decree?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, the consent decree is concerned with user data, which would be probably the reason that they were concerned if they're giving files to journalists that potentially data about users as well as data about individuals and employees would be given to them.
My understanding
So
is
I
that
didn't
they
ask
didn't
a
ask-
question. I didn't ask you a question, sir. Okay? So do you know that Elon Musk paid $44 billion for Twitter? Is that correct, Mrs. Schellenberger? Were you aware of that?
Yes, I read that.
And did you know that he received that part of the funding from Saudi Arabia as well as Qatar?
I heard that.
And did you know that one of those individuals who owns Binance was the company Binance, while he has Canadian citizenship, he is a Chinese national? Were you aware of that?
I did not know that.
Okay, and that he stated that that was for the cause. But thank you very much for answering my questions. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Wyoming for 5 minutes. With the gentlelady yield for 20 seconds.
Yes.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I just think this is interesting. First, the FTC is asking for your background, and now the ranking member of the Committee on the Weaponization of Government is asking for your sources. If
I
that
never
doesn't
asked them
raise-
for their sources.
Yes, you
I did
and
not
we-
ask for sources.
You know what?
I asked
The
if they were
gentlelady is not-
talking
the
to
gentlelady
Elon
is not-
Musk.
not
and they
recognized.
said that they were not talking. Well, you are not going to say
I will
I've
yield
asked
back.
for
I
sources.
will yield back to the
Thank
gentlelady.
you.
I thank her for
With
yielding.
respect, you asked me who gave me
I asked you who
files.
gave it to you, and when you said that they were your sources, I then asked you if you had spoken with Elon Musk. I did not ask you who those sources were.
The
For
gentlelady
the
from
record. Keep the
Wyoming is
record correct.
recognized, and she will receive an additional 20 seconds. The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
I want to follow up a little bit on the ranking member's questions. When was the first time that Mr. Musk approached you about writing the Twitter files?
Again, Congresswoman, that would,
I just need a date, sir.
but I can't give it to you, unfortunately, because this is a question of sourcing, and I don't give up. I'm a journalist. I don't reveal my sources.
It's a question of chronology.
No, that's a question
Because
of
you
sourcing.
earlier said that someone had sent you through the internet some message about whether or not you would be interested in some information.
Yes, and I refer to that person as a source.
So you're not going to tell us when Musk first approached you?
Again, Congresswoman,
So
you're
you
asking
just
me
say
to,
yes or
you're
no?
asking a journalist to reveal a
So
source.
then you consider Mr. Musk to be the direct source of all this?
No, now you're trying to get me to say that he is the source. I
Well,
just
it
can't answer
either
your
is or
question.
he isn't. If you're telling me you can't answer because it's your source, well, then the only logical conclusion is that he is, in fact, your source.
Well, you're free to conclude that.
Well, sir, I just don't understand. You can't have it both ways, but let's move on because
Well, no, he can. He's a journalist.
No,
have
he
it
can't,
both ways.
because either Musk is the source and he can't talk about it, or Musk is not the source. And if Musk is not the source, then he can discuss
No
his
one has
conversations
yielded. The
with
gentlelady's
source.
out of order. You don't get
And
to
she's
speak
out of
every
order
time.
gentlelady is
because
not
he's
recognized. The
interrupted.
gentlelady is not
Mr. Chairman,
recognized.
You're not recognized,
reclaim my
Mr.
time.
He has
can't
not
interrupt.
said that.
I don't.
What he has
talking
said
about
is he's
him.
not going to
Chairman,
reveal his source, and the
I
fact
did
that
not yield
Democrats
my
are
time
pressuring
to
him
the
to do
chairman
so
or
is
the
such a
regulator.
We're not.
violation
We're
of
asking
First
him
Amendment.
about his
Chairman,
conversations
back
with
to
Musk.
The gentlelady has not yielded you time. You don't
I
get
have
to
not
just talk
yielded
over
time
her.
to anybody. I want to reclaim my time, and I would ask the chairman to give me back some of the time because of the interruption. Mr. Chairman, I am asking you if you will give me the seconds that I lost.
We will give you that 10 seconds.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about another item that you, when you responded to the ranking member. You said that you had free license to look at everything, but yet you yourself posted on your I guess it's kind of like a web page. I don't quite understand what Substack is, but that what I can say is that in exchange for the opportunity to cover a unique and explosive story, I had to agree to certain conditions. What were those conditions? She asked you that question, and you said you had none, but you yourself posted that you had conditions.
No, the conditions, as I've explained multiple times.
No, sir, you've not explained. You told her in response to her question that you had no conditions. In fact, you kind of used the word license, that you were free to look at all of them, all 100,000 emails.
The question was posed, was I free to write about?
Sir, did you have any conditions?
The condition was that we published
Sir,
on
did you
Twitter.
have any conditions, yes or no? A simple question.
Yes.
All right, could you tell us what conditions those were?
The conditions were an attribution, sources at Twitter, and that we break any news on Twitter.
But you didn't break it on Twitter. Did you send the file that you released today to Twitter first?
Did I send the?
Sir, I'm
actually, I
asking
did.
you
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
Did you send it to Twitter first?
The Twitter
That was
files
one of the
thread?
conditions? Yes or no, sir?
The Twitter files thread actually did come out first.
But, sir, you said earlier that you had to attribute all the sources to Twitter first. what you released today, did you send that to Twitter first?
No. I posted it on Twitter.
First, sir. Or did you give it to the ranking member, to the chairman of the committee or the staff of the committee first?
Well, that's not breaking the story. That's giving. Yes, I did give.
So you gave all the information that you did not give to the Democrats. You gave it to the Republicans first. Then you put it on Twitter?
Actually, no. The chronology is a little bit confused.
Well, then
it's more or
tell
less
us
the
what the
same
chronology was.
I believe the thread came out first.
Where?
On Twitter.
On Twitter. So then you afterwards gave it to the Republicans and not the Democrats?
Yes, because I'm submitting it for the record as my statement.
Did you give it to them in advance?
I gave it to them today.
You gave it to them today, but you still have not given anything to the Democrats. Well, I'll move on, and I wanted to ask Mr. Schellenberger the same question, sir. When did you first visit with or get contacted by Mr. Musk?
I'm not going to reveal my sources, but like I said, I was invited by Barry Weiss.
I'm not asking for sources, sir. I'm just asking for chronology. When did you first make contact with Mr. Musk?
I don't know the exact date.
Was it?
It was December. It was December.
December of, well, there's a lot of Decembers in history.
December of
sir.
last year.
Which December?
December of last year, ma'am.
Last year, the 22?
Yes.
All right. Now, in your discussion, in your answer, you also said that you were invited by a friend, Barry Weiss?
My friend Barry Weiss.
So this friend works for Twitter, or what is her?
She's a journalist.
Sir, I didn't ask you a question. I'm now asking Mr. Schellenberger a question. Please
Yes,
do
ma'am.
not
Barry Weiss
interrupt.
is a journalist.
I'm sorry, sir?
She's a journalist.
She's a journalist. So you work in concert with her?
Yeah.
Do you know when she first was contacted by Mr. Musk?
I don't know.
You don't know. So you're in this as a threesome?
There was many more people involved than that.
There was many more people involved with it. Are you being paid to be here today, either through consulting fees,
No.
campaign contribution
Absolutely
to your next
not.
run?
Gentlelady's
Absolutely
time
Do you have
is
an interview
Gentlelady's
scheduled after
time
this
has
hearing?
expired.
Absolutely not.
Gentlelady's
Right,
time has
thank you.
expired.
Thank you.
I don't know what to say other than I'll recognize the gentleman from North Dakota for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll yield my 5 minutes
Oh,
to you.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I do think it's worth pointing out that, I have co-sponsored, I think some of my colleagues have co-sponsored the SHIELD Act in previous Congresses with Democrats to protect what we see them trying to do today, protect journalists from having to reveal their sources to government. That used to be a shared position in the Congress. Unfortunately, as we're seeing now, multiple occasions, it's not the position anymore. Mr. Schellenberg, I want to go to Twitter Files Part 7. I related a lot of what you put in there in my opening statement. And I want to give you as much time as you want, because I'm going to read the very first sentence, because something jumped out at me when I read the first sentence. In Twitter Files number 7, the FBI and the Biden laptop. You say this: how the FBI and intelligence community discredited factual information about the Biden foreign business dealings both after and before the New York Post revealed the contents of his laptop on October 14th, 2020. And what kind of jumped out at me was the way you framed it, because you did it backwards from what it's normally said. Normally you would say, the sentence would read, foreign business dealings both before and after. But I assume you did that for a reason, because in fact, I think the next sentence, you say social media companies discredit leaked information about Hunter Biden before and after. You use the normal, customary way in the second sentence, but the first sentence strikes me as you were trying to emphasize the before component of that statement. And I want you to just walk us through why you said that, because when I read it, it certainly was an operation both before and after, as you said, after and before.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading through the whole sweep of events, I do not know the extent to which the influence operation aimed at pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop was coordinated. I don't know who all was involved, but what we saw was you saw Aspen and Stanford many months before then saying, don't cover the material in the hack and leak without emphasizing the fact that it could be disinformation. Okay, so they're priming journalists to not cover a future hack and leak in the way that journalists have long been trained to, in the tradition of the Pentagon Papers, made famous by the Steven Spielberg movie. They were saying, cover the fact that it probably came from the Russians. Then you have the former general counsel to the FBI, Jim Baker, the former deputy chief of staff to the FBI, both arriving at Twitter in the summer of 2020, which I find what an interesting coincidence. Then when the New York Post publishes its first article on October 14th, it's Jim Baker who makes the most strenuous argument within Twitter. Multiple emails, multiple messages saying this doesn't look real. There's intelligence experts saying that this could be Russian disinformation. He is the most strenuous person inside Twitter arguing that it's probably Russian disinformation. The internal evaluation by Yoel Roth, who testified in front of this committee, was that it was what it looked to be, which was that it was not a result of a hack and leak operation. And why did he think that? Because the New York Post had published the FBI subpoena taking the laptop in December of 2019, and they published the agreement that the computer store owner had with Hunter Biden that gave him permission after he abandoned the laptop to use it however he wanted. So there really wasn't much doubt about the provenance of that laptop. But you had Jim Baker making a strenuous argument, and then of course you get to a few days after the October 14th release, you have the President of the United States echoing what these former intelligence community officials were saying, which is that it looked like a Russian influence operation.
Yeah.
So they were claiming that the laptop was made public by a conspiracy theory, and the conspiracy theory that somehow the Russians got it, and they convinced Yoel Roth that they convinced him of this wild hack and leak story that somehow the Russians stole it, got the information, gave it to the computer store, and it was bizarre. So you read that chain of events, and it appears as though there is an organized influence operation to pre-bunk.
Why? Why do you think they could predict the time, the method, and the person? Why could the FBI predict it? Not only did they predict it, they predicted it, so did the Aspen Institute. Seemed like everyone was in the know saying, here's what's going to happen, we can read the future. How do you think they were able to do that?
I think the most important fact to know is that the FBI had that laptop in December 2019. They were also spying on Rudy Giuliani when he got the laptop and when he gave it to the New York Post. Now, maybe the FBI agents who were going to Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook and to Twitter executives and warning of a hack and leak, potentially involving Hunter Biden, maybe those guys didn't have anything to do with the guys that had the laptop. We don't know that.
I know.
But I have to say, as a newcomer to this, as somebody that thought it was Russian disinformation in 2020, everybody I knew thought it was Russian. I was shocked to see that series of events going on. It looked to me like a deliberate influence operation. I don't have the proof of it.
Mr. Schellenberger, first, I'd just like to compliment you on your choice of tie today. Seems like we're on the same page. I would also just like to respond to your last point and just remind everyone that, of course, we all believe in the First Amendment, but the First Amendment applies to government prohibition of speech, not to private companies. I want to talk about your Twitter files number 7, Mr. Schellenberger. Are you aware that Rudy Giuliani was the sole source of the hard drive obtained by the New York Post?
That is my understanding.
And are you aware that Rudy Giuliani had been openly cavorting with agents of Russian intelligence throughout 2020?
That is also my understanding.
Now, this was the same Russian agent who had been feeding information to Senators Johnson and Grassley, I might add. But also, are you aware that Rudy Giuliani told the New York Times that he did not want anyone to do an analysis of the hard drive until it was published?
I was not aware of that exactly, but...
But you don't dispute it?
I don't dispute it.
And are you aware that one of the New York Post reporters for the Hunter Biden story refused to put his byline on the story?
Yes.
And are you aware that Fox News called the story, quote, very sketchy, unquote?
I'm aware that somebody at Fox News said that, yes.
Correct. Bret Baier at Fox News said that. And are you aware that the FBI had nothing to do with Twitter's decision to pause the New York Post story?
I am not aware of that.
Okay, well, let me read you the testimony from Yoel Roth at the hearing we had on February 8th. Quote, the FBI was quite careful and consistent to request review of the accounts, but not to cross the line into advocating for Twitter to take any particular action. And then Jim Baker said, in response to the chairman's question, when he asked, did you talk to the FBI about the Hunter Biden story? He said, to the best of my recollection, I did not talk to the FBI about the Hunter Biden story before that day. In other testimony, Yoel Roth said that the information that he received from the FBI had nothing to do with the Hunter Biden story. Now, are you aware that there was an analysis of the hard drive that was done by the Washington Post at a later date?
My awareness is that multiple media organizations have done analyses and found including CBS, and found that it was indeed, the laptop was authentic and that nothing had been changed on it.
So let's just get something clear. The laptop that the FBI had is different than the hard drive that Rudy Giuliani gave to the New York Post. A hard drive, you agree with this, is a copy from a laptop, right?
Yes.
And you are aware that hard drives can be altered, are you not?
Of course.
Okay. So are you aware that the Washington Post analysis of the hard drive showed that it had been altered?
I have heard that, but I'm also saying CBS verified.
Politico.
And other media organizations have verified. I mean,
but we're not talking about
authenticity.
We're not talking about authenticity. We're not talking about authenticity. We're talking about whether it's been altered.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no question there's some material on the hard drive that is authentic and accurate. But are you aware that there's some material that is not?
My understanding is that there are copies of the hard drive that have been tampered with, and that media organizations, including CBS, have verified that the laptop in question was not tampered with.
I don't know what the laptop in question, but let's move on, because you said in your Twitter files, am I correct, that every single fact in the New York Post story was accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall that the first paragraph of that Post story said that then Vice President Joe Biden pressured Ukraine to fire its prosecutor general because he was investigating Burisma, where Hunter Biden was on the board?
Yes.
Okay. I have here, which I'd like to enter into the record, the Trump-Ukraine Impeachment Inquiry Report, 300 pages by the House Intelligence Committee. Did you review this report before you said that every fact in this story was accurate?
Without objection, the material be entered in the record.
Did I read that before I wrote the Twitter files? No.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm aware of its
if
content.
you read this, you would have known that every single State Department and Trump administration expert on Ukraine said that Vice President Joe Biden, in concert with the European Union and the IMF, was executing official U.S. policy by encouraging Ukraine to fire the prosecutor general because he was not prosecuting corruption and was not prosecuting companies like Burisma. So that story, notwithstanding your allegations, was false. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates, for 5 minutes.
Impeachment nostalgia always warms my heart, but we are here focused on a weaponized government, a whole-of-government approach that has been turned against the American people. And while Rudy Giuliani may have been running around with the laptop in 2020, what is an indisputable fact is that the FBI had the laptop in 2019. And it appears that the last round of questioning misses the boat, that it's true. The information is authentic. The pictures, the videos, the emails, there hasn't been a single allegation that there is a single doctored email. Unlike what we saw before the FISA courts, where the FBI itself was doctoring emails to try to smear President Trump. But I have to get to a question I'm amazed hasn't been asked of the two of you. This FTC consent decree, where it is government action subject to rigorous scrutiny under First Amendment standards, government action demanding that your names be listed. How did it feel when you found out that you were being expressly targeted by a government document based on your reporting?
It was chilling. I mean, it's disturbing. I never thought that would happen in the United States of America, to be perfectly honest. I've lived in a bunch of authoritarian countries. I've visited a lot of authoritarian countries. Never thought this kind of thing would be going on here.
And the nexus to authoritarianism is the desire to control the nature of truth itself. Our understandings change about things. We learn new things. We challenge prior assumptions. But if a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. get to decide what the truth is, and then enforce it on the country, and then punish and target those who report on their conduct, we are drifting more toward that. How did you feel, Mr. Taibbi, when you saw your name?
I was upset, obviously. I lived in Russia during the 90s and early 2000s. I was there when Putin took power. I was friends with a group of very brave, muckraking reporters in Russia, many of whom didn't make it. A few of them were murdered after Putin came to power. So I've always been conscious of how the risks that other reporters take in other countries are incredibly severe, and that's one of the reasons why I'm motivated to protect the First Amendment, because our country has the best protections for reporters in the world. But this kind of thing, where the government is looking for information about reporters, it's usually a canary in the coal mine that something worse is coming in terms of an effort to exercise control over the press. And so on that level, it's absolutely disturbing. Also, the Aspen Institute report that we published today, talked about today in the Twitter Files thread, one of their recommendations was that the FTC be empowered to have unlimited power to search all data of private companies so that they could more freely and more accurately search the speech of ordinary citizens.
So as we're trying to put downward pressure on the government's expanding authority to be able to engage in what we see mostly from dictatorships, what you're reporting and what you're observing is that actually they view this as a growth industry, the information business, right? This yes. Censorship industrial complex is a growth industry to the government.
I think the key thing also, yes, and the thing to understand is that NSF...
what is NewsGuard, and how are they part of the censorship industrial complex?
Yeah, and by the way, we talked about Richard Stengel. He's on the board of NewsGuard. NewsGuard and the Disinformation Index are both U.S. government-funded entities who are working to drive advertiser revenue away from disfavored publications and towards the ones that they favor. This is...
Now, what I'm used to in this town is government officials pick their favorite outlets and they give them the best scoops and they give them the best stories. And there's a fusion of media and government that has long made me uncomfortable. But what you're describing now is literally the directing of revenue to certain media companies over other media companies designed and implemented with U.S. government funding and support.
That's right.
That is an astonishing way. If we do not take a look at NewsGuard, we have failed. And you talk about the brave reporting that occurs and what it subjects you to. I would suggest there's also political bravery that I have observed. While we've only heard from Democrats on this panel attacking you, discrediting you, a lot like they've tried to attack and discredit FBI whistleblowers who are truth tellers, there are brave Democrats who still believe in free speech, and I would advise my colleagues to look at the comments of Ro Khanna, who has been deeply, deeply concerned about this weaponization of government, and he believes these Twitter files are indeed worthy of our focus and our energy, and that is exactly what we are going to do. I yield back.
I think the gentleman would now recognize the gentlelady from New York.
I still have my 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
I understand why you may not.
Because you were yielded 5. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes. Excuse me.
Mr. Schellenberger, I may have misheard earlier, but is it your testimony here today that you disagree with the 2 indictments by Special Counsel Robert Mueller that definitively established that Russia interfered in our 2016 election through social media disinformation and a hack and leak operation?
No, I don't disagree.
Okay. Mr. Taibbi, do you disagree with those 2 indictments?
Well, indictments aren't a thing to disagree.
Do you disagree? They're about 40 or 50 pages. Do you disagree with the evidence outlined in those indictments?
Well, indictments are just charges.
I just asked you, do you disagree with the evidence included in those indictments? Yes or no?
I'm not on the jury of that case. I couldn't possibly say yes or no.
Okay, because you said earlier, I believe, that you did not see Russia, you could not confirm that Russia interfered in our election in 2016, that you don't believe that. Is that your testimony here today? You don't believe that they did?
I think it's possible that they may have on a small scale, but certainly not to what's been reported.
What's been reported or what's been included in the indictments?
Well, again, indictments are allegations. They're not proof. And
I understand. It's a pretty detailed allegation.
In the Mueller indictment, by the way.
You should go read the indictment and then come back and tell us if you actually think there's no proof of it.
Well,
but let me move on. Let me move on, please.
By the way, when
please, let me move on. That's how this works. You should know that by now. So, do you disagree with the special counsel Mueller's conclusion in his report, Mr. Taibbi, that the Trump campaign knew about Russia's interference, they welcomed it, and they used it for their benefit? You have no reason to disagree with that, don't you? You have no information. So after that foreign interference in our 2016 election, Twitter and other social media companies naturally wanted to work with the intelligence community to stop Vladimir Putin from interfering in our elections again. Mr. Taibbi, do you think it's a legitimate pursuit of the FBI to try to stop foreign interference in our elections?
Again, sir, will I be allowed to answer this question, or?
It's a yes or no question. Do you think it's a legitimate pursuit of the FBI?
It's not a yes or no answer.
No. I'm not asking how. I'm saying, as an objective, do you think it's a legitimate objective of the FBI to stop foreign interference in our elections?
I think it's a legitimate objective to stop actual foreign interference.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what the difference is, but that's fine.
Well,
since Russia used social media disinformation, according to Special Counsel Mueller, I understand you may disagree with the allegations, to interfere in our 2016 elections, are you trying to say that the FBI had no basis to inform social media companies about efforts to potentially interfere in our elections after 2016?
I can tell you that I read internal Twitter emails where Twitter expressly talked about the fact that the FBI couldn't possibly know more than they did about whether or not there was Russian interference, and that in fact even they couldn't determine which accounts were actually IRA and which ones weren't.
Okay, I understand you like to filibuster. That was not an answer to my question, but I'll move on. Mr. Schellenberger, in all of the emails that you reviewed, did the FBI ever direct Twitter to take down any accounts or remove any posts?
Yes.
They directed Twitter to remove them, or they said these may violate your terms and services?
Yes. I think that's an accurate use of the word direct.
They said these may violate. You think that saying that these may violate your terms and conditions is the same as directing them to take an account down?
Yeah, I mean, I think if a police officer says,
all right, well,
you broke the
that's
law.
Very helpful. That's very helpful. I'm glad to know that you think flagging something for a private company to make a decision about what they should do is a direction. Now, Mr. Chairman, you have repeatedly said that this committee is all about protecting the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And what's unfortunate here is that we are talking about Twitter, and that we are not talking about Republican government officials around the country who are banning books. And we are not talking about...
Would the gentleman yield?
No, I will not. And we are not talking about Donald Trump jailing his former counsel to prohibit him from publishing a book that the president did not want. The former president literally jailed his enemy. And we're here talking about Twitter. Twitter. And even with Twitter, you cannot find actual evidence of any direct government censorship of any lawful speech. And when I say lawful, I mean non-criminal speech, because plenty of speech is non-criminal.
I'll give you one, gentlemen.